HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network since 2009. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guests are Ariel Arce and Alessandro Pepe. We'll talk to Ariel and Alessandro about food, wine, and of course, Roscioli and more. We will taste something Alessandro plucked out of the wine room for our weekly wine sip. That's pretty representative of what's going on here wine-wise. I'm your host, Sam Van Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Ariel Arce is no stranger to the Grape Nation. She's joined us to talk about Air Champagne Parlor, Tokyo Record Bar, the opening of her concept restaurant, Niche, her champagne book, Better with Bubbles, and now the new outpost of beloved Roman restaurant, Roscioli. Alessandro Pepe comes to Roscioli, New York via Rome with a varied background, including comedy, acting, waiting tables, Somm, and is the founder of wine bar Rimessa Roscioli in Rome and in New York City. Roscioli is now open at 43 MacDougal Street in New York City. Welcome to the Grape Nation, Ariel. Welcome to the Grape Nation, Alessandro.
Hello. Thanks, Sam.
Congratulations to both of you on the opening of Roscioli. I know you're serving dinners, and I know you're in the process of finishing things up. To people that know Roscioli, it's kind of a cultish, top-of-the-list type thing, but there's enough people that don't know about it. So I want you guys, without talking over each other, to give a little background on you guys, which I'll get to secondarily, and Roscioli. So I guess, Alessandro, you could start with this. Mm-hmm. Just give people a little history of Roscioli. I mean, it's a restaurant in Rome. It's a family business. Don't take a lot of time, but, you know, how did it get there? Or what's it been doing? You know, they added things. Tell me a little about it.
Yeah, I mean, explaining things in few words in Italian and with the American culture, it's not in Italian culture is not easy.
No, yeah.
Especially
then you start swinging your arms too, right?
Especially because Roscioli is something that changed during the years. But let's say that Marco Roscioli, when he was 16 years old, he moved from this little village in Marche, and he followed some relatives in Rome. He was having no money. He started to work in a bakery called Antico Forno, and he was sleeping on sack of flowers. He didn't have a place to sleep, and he really started from the very beginning. So we are all here is mainly because of Marco, and then he was able to actually buy the bakery in 1967, And then his sons, Pierluigi and Alessandro, decided to buy kind of a rough deli that was not so far from
Pre-existing?
pre-existing. Yeah, it was a
So it
strange.
started as a bakery.
It started as a bakery,
Okay.
you know, everyone remember it. If you talk with all the people from Rome, I used to, when I was a child, I used to take the pizza bianca from the bakery. So Alessandro and Pierluigi decided to transform a deli in a kind of a deli restaurant. It was kind of a unique place. You have to consider there were not a lot of quality things in Rome at that time. A lot of tourism, especially in the 70s and 80s. The old trattoria were almost going to close. And so they opened this place that is salumeria con cucina, which means deli, it's delicatessen. Salumeria, it's even more rough, more traditional way. Pizzicheria. Usually used to be the farmers that had some, instead of actually going to the local market every Saturday or Sunday, Campo de Fiori, they said, why don't we open our own place there? And so started to create the link between the countryside and the city. And then they open a place and he started to open some tables also, and so a little kitchen. And he always do the quality of Alessandro, understatement. We're not a restaurant. Then the place became famous, and then comes my part. Like something like 15 years ago, more or less, I was working there as a cellar guy, and I decided to open.
So you were just a worker?
Yeah, I was just a worker there.
And nothing specific? I mean, you were
I
doing
was a
everything?
sommelier. No,
Was it wine specific, or just were you working?
Well, technically, I have a background. I opened 3 wine bars in Dublin. Before I was importing wines in
Makes
Dublin.
sense, right?
But but I was not starting from zero. Even though in that specific
Right.
case, I restarted actually from zero because my wife got pregnant. So from Dublin, I went back to Italy, and I met Maurizio, which is a kind of a wine guru and a champagne expert too. And so I followed him more. I didn't even know Roscioli, and that time was not so famous. Roscioli became famous mainly in the last 15 years. And it was just open, only 2 years, at the deli. And so I worked there as a cellar guy, and then I was one of the few that was speaking kind of a comprehensible English, and we had a lot of foreigners there. So I started to, and also you have to consider that in Rome, tourists are always be treated in a strange way,
Right.
If you want to cheat on someone,
Right.
And so I was taking care of them because I was doing tasting in Dublin. And so I started to do this little wine tasting, like in the back part of the restaurant. And we needed a bigger warehouse, and so at the cellar. So I found a place where we could move some of our wines, and I created the tasting room. It was almost at the sites. My first client was Anthony Bourdain, and so on. For that day, this Rimessa became kind of a mythological place where we were doing the strange, off the bit type of tasting, and then the business enlarged, and now Rimessa is actually bigger than Salumeria.
Right.
And then we met Ariel, but that's the second part. Okay.
We'll get to that. Just tell me, how do you get to Dublin? Why do you wind up in Dublin?
There was a cheap flight. I was in London. There was something you mentioned about my biography that I don't think even my son knows about it. You were talking about acting and comedy. I was the worst actor and stand-up comedian in the world. But
obviously, you're opening a restaurant. You're not on strike in Hollywood.
That's right. And but beside that, I used to be a documentarist and so on. And so I was a bit stuck in my my relationship with the film industry.
So previous career stuff.
I have at least 7, 8 different previous career from the 20 and so I end up in Dublin because there was a cheap flight. My actually goal was to get on a boat, on a cargo boat, and cross the ocean. But then I realized that I lost my passport, so I couldn't actually get into the boat. And so I was there with no money. So I started to work in a restaurant there, and I met a guy who is called Mick Wallace. Then now he's an important politician, and he gave me the key of a wine bar, and then I started my experience there. And then my ex-wife got pregnant, so I decided to come back to Italy.
Ariel, so now we have sort of a foundation of who Alessandro is and what was going on the other side of the pond. People know who you are from the podcast and from being in New York and in the business. I want to discuss with you what led to the final days of Niche. You had an incredible run. I remember the week you opened, I sat with you, and it was just the most amazing concept. And I think at the end, I asked you, can you sustain this? And you did. but I guess, if it didn't feel right or when it didn't, what led to that? Did it run its course? Were you networking and you had opportunities to tell me how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think for my career up until this point, it's always been about flexibility and being able to pivot and evolve and grow. And, I never set out in this business to be an operator. So I'm still very much learning. I'm learning with my partners now. I was learning by myself. I've been taught by my team. And I think, you know, I hate to say it because it sounds like a broken record, but COVID really was such a issue for niche as a concept, because niche was all about gathering in a space and the experience changing every single night. So, if you don't know what niche was, it was every single night of the week we'd invite in a different beverage professional from around the world. And they would choose 4 wines, and the wine list would change every single night as per the tasting. And then we have an amazing chef who's now a part of the Roscioli New York City project, but Aaron Lorette would change the menu every single night to pair with those 4 wines. So I'm sure you can understand that during COVID, when you couldn't have people come from different places, people couldn't be meeting in a specific space, you certainly couldn't take the risk of buying things that people wouldn't be purchasing. It just changed our concept completely. And also, everyone was really excited about food. I mean, for the most part, people were buying up every single wine they could get their hands on retail wise, and restaurants were doing their very best, to sell some wine. But it was really about delivery, takeout, having kind of experiences at home. And so we started doing collaborations with chefs. So over the first kind of year of COVID, we collaborated almost every single week with a different chef partner or restaurant from around the world, because people weren't able to travel anywhere. So we were saying, let's bring a little piece of somewhere abroad here. And naturally, we were able to continue with our previous customers, but we also started having new customers that were only knowing us for food. And niche first and foremost was always about the wine first. It was the first time that I kind of addressed, how do you flip the paradigm of, if you're going to do a tasting, but you're tasting wine first and you're pairing it with food and not vice versa. So I think for us, niche got to a place where so many people were coming for, what is the menu? What is the food going to be for that night? Are we now all of a sudden printing menus? Are we keeping dishes on for longer? Are we having collaborative chefs come for a longer period of time? And we wanted to go back to our original concept. And it became very hard to message that. And I think it became a little too messy. And I'm not disappointed with what happened, because we all had to do what we had to do to survive COVID. And I think a lot of people respected our choice to be, as flexible as we were and change what we did. But I think, had we known things like PPP were going to happen, or, ERC loans or grants were going to happen, then I could have made some decisions to stay true to our concept and kind of ride it out. But we didn't know that. So when we were in 2021, we were continuing this collaborative spirit, and I had met Alessandro in Rome that summer, and, we had talked about.
All right, so let's shift to that. So you met Alessandro, what year is this?
2021.
2020, you said 20.
Yeah.
My bad. And I said to you off air when I walked in, boy, you've done a lot of traveling these past few years. So obvious, and Italy, I know, was a favorite. So did you knew about Roscioli?
Of course. I mean,
did you know anyone there?
No.
Okay.
But
so now you brought up Alessandro. So talk to me about that.
No, just because of niche. I mean, this is what was so amazing, was that people would connect me to people all the time.
Right. This would be a good guy for a night type thing.
It was
or whatever.
Not even that. It was, hey, we know each other. I was just in Rome. I met these really cool people. Are you going to Rome anytime soon? Oh, yeah, I happen to be going there for 24 hours. Why don't I connect you to so-and-so, which happened to be Alessandro's partner, Lindsay Gabbard, who is from Michigan and was living and still is living in Rome. And he was like, why don't I connect you guys? She works at this cool place, Roscioli. And I was like, oh, yeah, I tried to get a reservation there, virtually impossible. And, that night I had a reservation to go to this amazing restaurant, but I was only in town for literally like 12 hours. It was my birthday. And then I ended up spending the whole night on the street with Alessandro and Lindsay and their team at Rimessa. And it was wonderful.
So do you remember that?
I remember.
And was that
It's our meet cute. It's our origin story.
But that I was just to say that was the impetus for the beginnings of this. Did the conversations about, hey, you should come to New York, or how specific did you get? How deep were you in?
I was actually invited to come back to Rome again the next month by Alessandro before we ever talked about New York City.
Oh,
but
nice.
It was on that next trip that we talked about how they wanted to come and they were going to do some pop-ups with some other friends that they had here. And selfishly, I was like, can we do something together? And, we kind of threw a whole bunch of ideas together. Alessandro is one of the most creative people I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. And he threw about 400 ideas at me. And I was like, I thought we were going to do a night. Well, now we're going to have to do 5.
Didn't you do a week?
We
a
did
Roscioli
a week of programming, yes.
So based on what you talked about before, where you started as kind of wine and the food was a backdrop, and then COVID brought food forward. What did you do those 5 days? I mean, it's like, hey, it's great to be in New York. I'm with this person I met and I kind of love.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
The first thing that was actually quite interesting is that sometimes when you do something original, you feel a bit alone in the world. It's a nice feeling, but also sometimes you feel a bit detached. New York is an incredible creative place. Rome, don't think it as such a place that is moving a lot.
Really?
Not a lot of things happen in Rome.
Really?
It's a monumental, eternal city because nothing changed. So if you think of
Wait, hold on. Do you agree with that?
I understand.
Not you understand.
I understand it. I'm a voyeur when I'm in Rome, so everything feels new to me.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, as being kind of let into these people's lives, I can see they do a lot of the same things. They do, going to the same Cheers bar every single night, or everybody meets up in this place on this day, or, this is this restaurant that I've been returning to for years, or this is where I get my coffee every morning.
Is
There's
that
a
correct,
lot-
Alessandro?
No, it is. But it's comparing to the fact that in 2022, we were almost signing for the contract. We were here on our team. And we spent like 8 hours with her. We visited, I think, like 20 wine bars and restaurants in 8 hours. And usually in Rome, we go to one place. But it's something that I like. The fact, idea we usually go to that place. It's not something, I love Rome. To me,
You're
Rome is
more open than the
but on the
guy.
same time, I was born in Milan. I think I have a kind of more a fluid approach to places in general. I mean, I moved here. I'm 51, and I like the idea. A lot of people would have been scared of my age.
You've never lived in New York before.
No, when I was 9 years old, I lived
You
in Princeton.
visit-
No, I lived in a year with my mother. She was teaching at university.
But in the last 10 years,
No,
have you been
I
in-
used to come here
So you were-
every year for like a week or two for the last 7 years, maybe beside COVID, to do pop-up events.
Oh, okay.
But, not as complex as the one we did with her.
Okay.
No, she was saying Alessandro is a super creative person. And this is like, Ariel is a super creative person. I remember that she was trying to explain what was happening at Niche. And I said, this person is copying me. Like, we do the same thing, but I do this, and I do this, and I do this. So there was this incredible connection of the fact that, and she didn't know our place, we didn't know her place. But we were doing
Soulmates.
really similar things. And trust me, can I show off a bit? I don't think places like Niche and like Rimessa, there are a lot in the world, and I visit a lot of places.
Oh, I totally agree.
The idea to use wine not as a tool, but as a weaver. Wine is not the main subject. The wine is a tool. It is a tool, actually, in a way, to help people to stay together, to create situation. We don't dissect the wines like they were dead bodies, spending hours
Well, those
explaining it.
premises differentiate you and how you think about, wine in a restaurant or a bar. It's not like you said, just something to be dissected in a liquid in a glass.
There are some wine bars and restaurants that are able to work on this situation. There are few of them. I would say I can mention like 2, 3 in Paris, maybe in New York, more.
What can you mention?
In Rome, I think we were the first one. Like
Tell
7,
me
8 years ago, we were the first one.
Tell me in Paris that sticks out to you.
I don't think about Vervolet, for example. I am thinking about
Marco Peltier
Blanche,
doing
Blanche.
Clown Bar, maybe.
Yeah.
Vabbè, Chateaubriand in a way is a concept,
So
but
I was,
even but also those ones are places that are like 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I would guess that Rimessa was like one of the few places that was doing things like that.
The thing that I always got feedback on for Niche, and I can see it the same thing at Rimessa, is that restaurants all around the world do what we do for like one night a month, right? They spend all this time putting together a really special event. And it was mind-blowing to a lot of people that we would do those events every single night. And I think in general, you see incredible pop-ups, you see amazing underground dinner parties, you see people doing really cool stuff. But when it comes to being like a mainstream model, the model that we share is something that I actually think is like a no-brainer model, because it allows you to know before people walk in the door how many people are going to be there, how many bottles of wine for the most part you're going to open, what your food costs are going to be. It makes things quite simple. It's the mechanics that I think scare people.
that's what I was
And
going
I'll
to
tell
say.
you that
People are lazy. They're
Alessandro
not ready
and
to
I
execute.
are not normal people.
Right. You're hustlers.
But we're
And
also
creatives.
We're creatives. But we've also found a lot of people that are similar to us that are open to doing service. By the way, that's my father who built these
Who built this
restaurants.
place.
So he's allowed to interrupt everything.
He's allowed to do whatever he wants.
But there's so many other people that are interested in doing that. They don't necessarily have the spirit to go out there and take on that risk. But I'll tell you, and Alessandro will say the same thing, the people that we get to work with are, if not more talented, more creative than we
Right.
are. And it becomes a machine. It becomes no different than any other type of style of model that you have kind of worked on and honed into, and it becomes yours. It's virtually terrifying for me to consider doing a la carte service, but doing
That's funny.
something like what we do
Yeah.
is like this is a breeze.
I have an interesting, actually, the origin of my tasting dinner is the same one that she was doing. It's coming from, I feel like Django Reinhardt, he was playing with only three fingers, because I was the worst waiter in the world, really. And
You're still really great.
Say, if I go to a table and they used to order me more than 2 people, I couldn't remember what they were ordering. So I actually created the tasting menu so that I decided for them. So it was some kind of a minus. But the concept, a la carte menu scares me too. I don't know if it's the same thing for you, Ariel. I think that maybe the reason why Niche and Rimessa are so particular and singular is that we technically do not come from that background.
Right.
We come from, I think you've been to La Guardia School, you've been acting too. So the idea that we were on a field that it was more about on the edge of arts and stuff. And so the fact that I personally, the reason why I do all these things is because technically I don't like my job. I don't like to do always the same job every day. I get bored. I like the idea to have a theatrical approach to things, that every day there is a new happening, that every day is something new. I know it's stressing, incredibly stressing, creating every night. But there are times at Rimessa we have 3 winemakers passing to the table. A guy is doing an olive oil tasting. Then we have a Taste the Legend. Then at the same time, like there is a same thing. Maybe in our tasting, they were not changing every night, but there were a lot of things. And here you had every night a different thing. And also you had music here. I don't know how much we can talk about because we're not allowed to do live music, but maybe we did a little unplugged stuff here. And
yeah, when you talk to Alessandro and I about restaurants, like you're going to get 20 minutes of kind of interesting content. But when you talk to us about like why we're in this business and our philosophy and how theater and emotion and energy play into what we like to create. It's a much more interesting story, and I think it has a lot more to do with what we're trying to bring into the world rather than just like the mechanics of how a restaurant operates.
Well, that's no preconceived notion.
Yeah.
It's like, forget this is what happens every day or how you do it. This is what we want to do and how we want to do it. And both of you sort of pledge you're willing to put the work in, and it requires
Even though I have
extra thought and work.
I have my Madeleine. I mean, it's unfair to say that I was actually brought into this business by chance, because I remember that when I was 18 years old, the first time I had my driving license, I actually went with all my friends to a harvest party in Tuscany. And I remember spending one time in a disco pub in my life. I was always on wine fairs. I was in winery. 18 years old was something kind of unique, you know, moving to like a little village in Tuscany. So that sense of community, that sense, and I remember that I was 18. I started my first business selling old school school books. I was buying from the student. I remember we made a lot of money. We spent it in 3 days. We spent a lot in wine bottles, like an 18, like $200 for a wine bottle for 18 years old guy. It's like it was part of my passion. So even though I was into theater, I was into writing and other stuff.
I don't think it's, like I said, it's not a coincidence that the two of you were drawn together, and you're very creative and concept people, and I want to talk about that more. But I also want to frame in people's minds the physical aspect of this. Like, I'm going to put you in the position for a few minutes. I'm walking down Houston. I cut down MacDougal. I'm at the front entrance. There's a lot going on here, and a lot that will be going on when you're finished. It's a multi-level place. It's service, offerings, all of that stuff. So talk to me about, when you walk in, because there's not a lot of places like Roscioli, and, you're going to kind of replicate that. So physically, tell me what the final look is going to be.
Well, I think that it's always going to be ever changing because, again, Alessandro has a million ideas. And I think this is more than anything a place and space that we want to create community. And we really want to find every possible way that we can to not compromise on quality, whether that's from experience or products or wine thought or, just humans. Like the quality of humans together is a rare thing. So when you come to Roscioli, when it will be fully open, the upstairs will be an alimentari / wine bar a la carte restaurant. And I know that sounds silly for me to like break it down into those things, but for us, it's like, it is a lot of different stuff going on in one place. It's not just a restaurant. It's not just a shop. It's not, so you'll be able to come in there and order off a menu of delicatessen items as well as composed dishes, from pastas to Roman classics to really cool seasonal dishes that our chefs will be going to the market every day and working with local farmers. We also have a shop up there that will have about 150 different products that are either made for the Roscioli family, made in tandem, or are our own private label productions of sauces and oils and, all these amazing ingredients that come from Italy. A huge part of the ethos in Italy, and Alessandro can speak to it more, is that, working with the highest quality ingredients from all over Italy as well as all over the world. And so in New York City and the tri-state area, there's people producing incredible dairies and, produce and seafood. And so we're working with people as well to continue with that ethos here.
Aren't you, in a good way, forced to do that because you can't import certain things like unpasteurized dairy or I think certain ingredients that are the wheelhouse of the Salamaria, however you pronounce it, you can't ship here. So maybe you go upstate and get a burrata guy, or is that, where...
The greatest achievement, and I think that's the best That's what scares me more. We have been thinking about this opening for 7 years. The Roscioli family refused a really, really important proposal from big brands and stuff, mainly because of how do we organize? Maybe because they didn't want to move from Rome,
Right.
but also, which is a nice
But
thing
they
about
don't
the
want- they
Roscioli
didn't wanna
families. You know what?
compromise
maybe,
anything, right.
It was not even that. It was just about, so I was possibly a bit more international. Even though Pierluigi came here, he did a lot of events too, and Alessandro. But there was this thing, and at a certain point, I made this decision because I realized that if we were creating a hub and a connection between Rome and New York, there was, and I'm not really sure, I'm hoping, there was a possibility to create a developing a system that develops, then instead of lower the quality, increase it. How does it work? You don't create a pyramid system. You create an horizontal system. You create a net of artisans that help each other and help you, and you support them to make decisions. When it comes to wine, even more than when it comes to food. Give you an example. If you are a winemaker, and there are a lot of what I call neo-rurals nowadays, technically it's a good thing. There are some people are going back to their roots, they are going back to traditional. You have to consider that Italy completely has been desertified in terms of higher hills and colline. They all went to the factories in the 60s and 70s. They completely abandoned. It's an overpopulated country, Italy, but you can find places that are completely desertified. If you go to Calabria, you see all these villages, beautiful middle-aged village. There is like 2 people that are more 100 years old. If there is someone that is still there that is less than 90 years old, is because he's making wine or olive oil. It's the only thing that keep you there. And sometimes I also discuss with my friends, today we all talk about national pride. We have a fascist prime minister at the moment. I don't want to talk about politics, but, they all talk about what does it mean to be Italian. And sometimes say, what do you
We
think?
know what you mean.
Yeah, no, but, what do you mean to be Italian? You eat Philadelphia cheese, you go to McDonald's, you watch American Netflix series, you live in a house that is like a copy of the suburbs of Detroit, and you barely know where is the Colosseum sometimes because you don't go to the central Rome, you're right. And so you're completely detached, we don't read a lot, our cultural level is going down. And the only thing that makes you feel again is the food and the wine sometimes, and especially in the countryside. And so helping these people here and say, I'm not actually putting my brand on you. I just support you. I'll buy you the wine more at a higher price as long as you keep that. And less about, for example, okay, instead of making 1 kilo per plant, I'll do 3 kilo per plant. No, keep it there. Instead of using a freestanding bush, I'll do a Guyot because it's actually more convenient. Or instead of, I'll put some more sulfites and I'll put some selected yeast. No, don't do that. I'll help you, I'll support you, and this is what is happening with most of the winemakers. With tomatoes, is the same story. There are a lot of breeds of tomatoes that are, almost risking extinction. It's about, I wouldn't say that it's just about quality, because this is a subjective concept. It's about defending cultural biodiversity.
Right. Which
is more important.
Much more important.
We were actually focusing a lot on the best wine in the world in the 90s. Oh, this big cab is beautiful, 90 points, 100 points. But is everyone talking about how the wine should be different one from the other? They're more than which is the best, which is. I don't want to live in a world that is only Cab and Merlot. I love them, Cab and Merlot. We have more than 1,800 different grape varieties, and it's actually the widest in Italy.
That's diversity, I agree. But people and culture are as important as quality, and diversity.
Well,
like
you have
said.
to define what quality means. And I think we've gone so far into the luxury marketing of the word quality, which means expensive and rare. And really, quality for me means that you're working with artisans who are not compromising what they're producing. And I think, what Alessandro is doing with the wine program is so phenomenal, because not only is he supporting, but he's also getting invested in the physical land and the physical space and putting down roots in those places to be able to, bring those stories and story tell with a whole new audience that would never, ever have access to these things either. And they're not necessarily better than other things. They're just their own. And when things are small, they get lost. And I think having a platform like Roscioli allows small things to feel very big and very rare and very special. And they're not compromising the quality of how those things are being produced. And then all of a sudden you create demand for something that nobody had demand for. And Alessandro does this so well without even realizing that he's doing it. He's just so dedicated to his pursuit of, I think, maintaining the old culture of Italy and these incredible artisans and producers that, like he said, will become extinct at a certain point.
Right.
And that's, an amazing thing to bear witness to in the dining room. The last week, in 3 different seatings, we opened a cheese that is made in clay that Alessandro can tell you about, that nobody is making, one producer is making, and he makes, you can say, I don't know, 40, 100, it's very small
we're
production of these
asking-
things.
This is here or in Italy?
No,
And-
he's here. Alessandro Polizzi.
You
actually,
found a
no,
purveyor that.
I didn't actually. Alessandro did. Our colleague,
Right.
and she's actually Alessandro Roscioli found it, and Alessandro Polizzi, which is our colleague, he did all the thing of the FDA, which is not easy.
Are you confident and excited that there are a lot of opportunities like that in food?
What I actually was so happy, and first of all, if you were asking me to open all this thing 15 years ago, I don't know. I think we were not ready. I was truly not ready, but in general, we didn't have the audience ready to accept it, and there were not enough artisans. One of the few good things of all the problems we have with the environment, there is a small group of people that is going back to the land to try to see, is there a way where I can create my little ecosystem that is sustainable from a lot of different reasons, not just from economic reason, from an environmental reason. So it means that if I don't buy 50, 100 acres of vineyard planted
Right.
in a valley, put a lot of chemicals, destroy all the forest around. It is about, no, I'm going to tell about this story later if you want, we're going to drink the wine. But if we're talking about like a place that likes the 2, 3, 4 acres of vineyards, okay, like no, maybe more, 7, 8 acres of vineyard, a little winery there, 10,000 bottles, strongly supported by us, price that is higher than usual. We're talking about bottles that never exceed $60. All of us are between 25. Of course, they're not, supermarket wines, but I'm talking about American prices. In Italy, sources, of course, is cheaper. So we're not talking about bottle cost of $200, $300 per person. So the idea that creating a bit of a biodiversity there, actually all these winemakers here, there is maybe 2 acres of vineyard, and there is 5, 6 acres of cork bark trees. How do you call it? Cork trees. Maybe you have like strawberries, and you have salads, and you have pears and lemons and olive trees,
Fruits,
because
vegetables.
that's what used to be once upon a time. The country, you didn't have a supermarket, so your supermarket was your land. And I guess that in a way, I'm not one of these people that say we have to go back to Neolithics, but I'm saying maybe we should start to look backwards with a modern approach. And tradition, my mother is an anthropologist, so I know how tricky could be the word tradition. There's a beautiful definition of Samuel Corda. He's a builder and a farmer. He makes the wine for us in Sardinia. And he literally is actually killing himself because he does 2 jobs. Okay. And he said, taking care of tradition is taking care about the fire, not taking care about the ashes. Right. Which is a beautiful definition. Is about, it has to be something that it's not dead, that is still there. You keep it there. And it changes. It's not something fixed. So that's it. The idea that now we can possibly, I've seen, for example, cheese. I remember 7, 8 years ago, American cheese were not as good as now. I see things are changing.
No, New York State,
no, they're
Vermont,
changing.
Wisconsin,
They're starting to work with raw cheese and so on.
I will jump into this conversation
because
my first job that I ever had was working for artisanal cheese. And that was, 15 plus years ago.
Just starting to happen.
And it was just starting to happen. I remember like right around that time, this was like 2009, Harbison had just won as like the most kind of acclaimed American cheese. And now we look at a cheese like Harbison, if you're an American cheese lover, and you're like, that's kind of like the gold standard of kind of some unique stinky alternative style cheese, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. And companies like Saxelby's and all sorts of amazing markets that are happening in the tri-state area, we're seeing American cheese is exploding. And it's something I'm so proud to see as somebody who loves an import. Naturally, I'm a French and Italian and Spanish cheese eater. Those are the things that totally turn me on. But, the American cheese market is growing exponentially. So I don't mean to say that I'm trying to cut off this conversation. I'm just saying that it's been happening. But as always, it's like you start to lay the roots of people getting excited. And then all of a sudden, everything comes together from the production side and the demand side, and you get to see, where we're heading in this country from our produce.
It's very exciting. I want to kind of morph into wine, but I want to finish on food for a couple of minutes.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
So another thing that I'm actually
Sure.
more and more, I don't really distinguish anymore wine from food in a way. And I go back to the Italian tradition where wine was considered food up to 70, 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So technically the characteristic
I
of
totally
Rimessa
agree with you. It's an agricultural product.
Yeah, is that the wine and food are actually
Yeah.
mixing together. And we
Yeah.
did this mistake that we separated the wine from
No.
the dinner,
No.
which is also unhealthy in my opinion because you need food to digest.
I totally agree with you.
I would love to just add on. I know that you want to move us in a direction, but
No. Remember what I said. Wherever we go, we go.
I think you see in trends, which is something that I think both Alessandro and I really like to study, not because we have any background in that, just to understand what's happening. I think we've tried to really dumb down wine. Like we've tried to take wines that are so historical and so storied, and we've tried to label them as natural, organic, sustainable. We've given them buzzwords. We tell you that wines are great for holidays or great for dinner parties or for this specific food experience. Like this wine's amazing. But what I love
Rosé was a summer wine.
yeah, like
period.
we've taken an entire category and we've turned it into experiential marketing. And while I love taking on those types of challenges, what I think these guys do better than anybody else is give you so much information and honor the history and the producer so deeply. And I think there's a moment now where maybe 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, brother, like another small producer, like, okay. And now I'm like, I only want to know about the guy that's making 10 bottles in his backyard.
The story is prominent now.
And not necessarily even about like, oh, he's making it in his back, in his barn and he's doing what's like, I want to know the quality producers that I would never know and understand them so holistically and deeply so that I gain a connection to them. And, this is, of course, a very millennial response to food and drinking and everything. You want to know all the information. But I think it's a really awesome opportunity for these guys to tell people's stories and not just tell them to market them, tell them with extreme detail to the most niche information because they're so deeply connected to them.
I think there was a movement towards that. I think we've seen it, but I don't know how deep the commitment was. I think you have natural wines because natural wines are hot. Millennials want to hear the story, so you tell the story. But I don't know how, the real stuff, is happening here. Just to close the food thing, Roscioli started as a bakery. Are you doing any baking here?
We don't
Minimal? Okay. I don't want to dwell on that question.
We didn't finish the experience of what it means to come here because we started upstairs.
Well, we didn't.
We're tangential.
So you have the sit down
yes,
deli.
And when you talk about baking, we will be baking.
We have a really expensive
So
oven.
to fit into
I can
that
tell
part,
you that we
'cause
spent
you're right.
$15,000 in
In
our
a good
oven.
way, we're all over the place. But one of the things I wanted to ask
we
you
will
was,
not have a forno. We will. This location will not be a forno. So you will
What's a
not
forno?
be
Tell
coming in
people.
to have
Bakery.
only baked
Okay.
goods and pizzas, but we will do a pizza bianca. We will do probably a focaccia. We
Right.
will do something with some really interesting grains. I mean, we have such great references to be able to do that here. But unfortunately, the space is not large enough and does not have the capacity
And
for us to bake the way we want to.
branded packagings of Roscioli products, like
Yes.
pastas and all that.
Absolutely.
And I know they're all over
I
Italy.
need to say
they're going to
something.
be here.
I need to say
You
something.
say whatever you want.
When you start to think in a weaving and a network connection, in a mushroom approach to things, I just finished the Sheldrake book, so I'm into mushrooms right now, and I love the idea that you have to forget about your ego and you have to start. I'm kind of, me and Ariel were both two alpha people, so, but I think we have both
Really?
of the capacity. She giving me compliment that I will send her back because she's creative as much as more as I do. She has a capacity even more than I have in selecting people. Her team, I was in love with her and the place, but especially with the team and Matt and Kenneth and Hugo and Cody and Aaron are two incredible chefs.
Everything she
yeah.
touches is surrounded
No,
by the
it's
best
incredible.
people.
The way she selects people is incredible. And also selecting
Yes.
people that are somehow has the same skills. It's not about me, it's about how I'm into, and everyone is doing everything and so on. So I think about how Gaetano Sacoccia helped us in finding all the ingredients. My Gaetano is my alter ego in I don't know if he considers himself his alter ego, but we've been friends for more than 15 years. And think about also Lindsay's been doing with me with Americans, and the job that Alessandro Polizzi is doing to connecting, finding all these producers, and of course we learned this from Alessandro Roscioli. Alessandro Roscioli opened a place in Via dei Giubbonari. He could become a billionaire selling a cheap pizza and that's it. He opened a place that was economically nonsense. I know because I was the one at the beginning that was paying the bills. Not the bills, not with my money, but I was in charge, to order the wines and stuff. And we were always struggling with money because the way he was putting in a place that is smaller than this, 1,200 products, buying a Uselito when nobody was buying Uselito. I think he was the first one in Rome, selling a prosciutto that was $300 per kilo, and also other things that were cheaper, but on the same really unique. It's not easy,
So take us to baking. What do you mean by this conversation? How do we get to work with incredible bakers? Well, the question was, were we going to have baked goods?
No. Okay.
The baking. You don't have to answer that.
No, I'm gonna.
It's
No,
just because when you go backwards, the history of Roscioli starts as a bakery.
I have an answer for
Quickly.
everything. I am saying that we will slowly get to it.
Yes.
Don't worry
really
about it.
Carefully.
But Ariel,
we really respect the Pierluigi job and what happened into the bakery. We don't make strange stuff. We will do things slowly, but we are working a lot on flowers right now. So
we won't hold you to it. All right. So you brought up a good point that we kind of left something we were talking about. So you walk in and, there's the market, the restaurant and all that. There's a huge wine component. We're sitting in a gorgeous wine room, and there's another dining area.
So that exists as it does. And then underneath it, we have our tasting menu, which is kind of the, hybrid identity of Niche meets Rimessa. If you have only ever been to the Salumeria or the Forno, this will look very foreign to you, but we have a lot of guests and customers coming through the door where the only thing that they've experienced is these tasting experiences.
Right.
So it is 4 wines and 4 courses, but we call it the 4 plus more because in every seating you're getting an extra course of food or a unique different wine or whatnot. So that happens 2 times a night at 6 o'clock and 8:30.
That's what's open now.
And that's currently open.
Right.
And we also have this gorgeous wine cellar where we get to do on Mondays and Tuesdays, maybe we'll do it even more, a more elevated tasting where we do about 8 to 10 wines and 8 courses of food. That's led by Alessandro and our sommelier team. And that's a little bit more expensive, but God, last night I got the pleasure of sitting down and enjoying it, and it is too cheap for what we're giving.
Well, yeah, after we just talked about, how you approach wine, it's an incredible opportunity. So
that's how this place works. And then Alessandro's doing wine classes on Sundays and Saturdays.
Well, we'll get to that because I want to get to the wine. We have to take a quick break. You're listening to the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We're talking to Ariel Arce and Alessandro Pepe at the new Roscioli in New York City.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's is open for lunch and dinners 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City, Long Island, and Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
All right, we're back. We're back with our guests, Ariel and Alessandro. When I cut you off, Ariel, we were talking about wine, and I want to talk a little more about the wine, what's here. You know, it's funny, because I have a question that I was going to ask you, and let me see if I can find it. It was sort of like, what are you going to be doing here that no one else is doing? And you answered that already.
Well,
Your eye and attention towards what's important about wine beyond filling the glass, you know, that connection that's important, the culture, the people.
something that is happening here that wasn't happening at Niche, for example, but absolutely has been happening at Rimessa, is that Alessandro works with, and you can say how many people in total, but something like 60 to 70 wine producers in Italy.
No, actually, much more. Here in New York, yes, but in Italy, it's 250 more or less.
And these
are the producer makers? The wine?
Producers, some of them are
We're
really
not
well
talking
known, some other less. Some
but we're not talking distributors or
No,
negotiators.
that are all
wine,
direct,
yeah.
Yeah, the winemakers.
Yeah.
And we're showcasing those wines specifically in our tastings. So this cellar that we're sitting in is, yes, filled with legendary wines from legendary producers that, you know, date back probably to the 80s, maybe even the 70s. But such a huge cornerstone of what we're really showcasing here are these producers that Alessandro works hand in hand with. And those are definitely nowhere else in New York / in America. So
/ in Italy, actually.
That's that's exciting. And I think people that kind of get wine, realize the opportunity to come here and, to drink those producers. Are you working with the chefs? Who is it, Tommaso and Aaron? Your chefs? Who are your chefs here? As far as pairing wines and food, or the
of course,
silly question, right? No, but there's such a come on, Ariel.
Such a huge part.
But the wines that he's bringing in and the approach is a little different. That everything that's available. Yeah. What are you going to try to do in the States? Whether it's New York State, Long Island, California, any other one, are you going to try to seek out and befriend wineries in the U.S. Does that exist? Does that interest you?
I have just a little project for the future. I want to save the world. So,
okay. Wait, the project is to save the world?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't mind that.
So technically, my ambition is, our ambition as our mission. In this case is really mission. I'm not religious, but I'm kind of a bit evangelic, actually. My mission is really to create a format that I want people to copy. I want people to copy us. I want people to follow us. I want people, and so I want to create a trend that is potentially not the solution of the problem we have with the environment, but it's about listening a bit more of the environment. With the environment, and I'm not just talking about climate change, I'm talking about how, which is a beautiful definition of Dale Jemianson, which we did something really weird. The second day we opened, I organized a conference with two professors after dinner. Like, it was impossible after 7 wines. But I think it came out a nice podcast and people were kind of paying attention to, with Paolo Pecer and Dale Jemianson. He's an incredible professor. And he's talking about, we should stop to talk about nature. We should start to talk about environment. Because nature is something that is, we and nature. Harlem is an environment. Washington DC is an environment. Industries are environment. It's not just the forest that we save. We save a bit of a forest, and who cares about the rest? We need to create a more cultural and human relationship with all the world around. So more than we do it, and more we see, and we start to support the local cheesemakers, maybe other cheesemakers start to do it. Maybe if we start to support and promote a certain approach to wine production, which is not necessarily the garagist. I know exactly, remember garagist. My place is called Rimessa. It means garage. Like, I mean, I was, I have this wine that is in the backyard is better than the other because it's small. No, not necessarily. That's what I used to say. I choose the small winemakers, not because they're better than the big ones, because with the small winemaker, if I don't like it, I know who I have to blame. So, so I have more control on who is making it. Bigger is the production, and less you have control of it. Less you are listening and feeling sentiment, the cycle of production, which is the problem nowadays. You get lost in where is this coming from. You see, you read organic, but that thing is not organic. They tell you that this water is coming from Fiji, and they see these beautiful commercials, and then it's not true. I mean, it's difficult to define truth in general, but at least you are a bit more aware about it. This is actually approach. It regards wine, it regards food, it regards everything.
Listen, I think there's a lot of thought put towards that. I mean, who you're bringing in, what they're doing, is important. I don't think restaurants spend the time thinking about it. And to your point, I do hope it you want people to copy. I hope people realize this is the best way to do it, and also work with artisanal producers and everything.
I don't think we should graze over how hard it is to do that work as well, too. I mean, it is a life dedication that Alessandro Pepe has, that Alessandro Roscioli has, to really diversify themselves and really go out there and find the best. And as a person who likes to say that I would not compromise on quality, like, of course I do. I'm a New Yorker. I want things fast. I want things easy. I want things available. I want them 10 minutes ago. It's very easy for you to go to a big conglomerate and buy absolutely everything and pay one vendor, right? And so to do that extra legwork, it's not going to take you double the time, but it's going to take you more time. Right. And it does yield a better return in the end, but it's a lot of work. And I don't think everybody can do that, but I do think taking a little piece of that where you can does make for a better product.
So wait. So
and I'm not saying that we're not going to change
the end user is the
no. But
wait. The end user.
Wait. Can I say one thing about it? When we talk about work, what about how heavy is something? I don't want to do it because the effort is more. When you put art and aesthetics in your job, there is no more effort. I stopped working 4 or 5 years ago, and I work like 16 hours a day.
You also sleep 2 hours a night.
No, but
you're superhuman.
I stopped working. I don't work because to me it's a pleasure. So I cannot see it differently. So, and I see a lot of winemakers that they work really hard, and I actually see a lot of people that work for multinational company. They pollute the world. They're not happy. I can perceive it that most of these people are not happy. You know what I'm saying? It's a different lifestyle.
I wouldn't say it's a rare thing, but it's not the most common thing. What you found, such a love
happy
and passion
to teach people to do it.
Well, I think would we agree that it's sort of magnetic and catching being around him? I mean,
of course. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to be around somebody who's passionate and dedicated and is authentic. I think it's hard. You know, people would always say to me, like with Airs, right? Like, how do you do what you do at Airs and lower the cost of the champagne so that, you know, the price point is da-da-da and the experience is X. And the only reason why I can do that is because Tokyo Record Bar exists underneath it, and that helps support the model, right? Like, everybody can't do the thing necessarily if they're not set up to do it. I don't have the type of energy that Alessandro has. I'm a woman from New York City who's like, you know, lived a completely different life. And I come from a capitalist background. He comes from a socialist background. Like, our worlds and our cultures and all these things and our experiences lead us to be able to do and live the lives that we do. But I think if you can take a piece away from somebody like Alessandro, who really truly lives his life and his work and everything that he believes so authentically, then you can be able to change some of that mundaneness in your life, or that thing that isn't feeling so great. You can change those things.
Right.
And I would say that I thought that getting back to working in a restaurant was going to be not what I wanted to do, right? You joked with me, you've been traveling a lot last year, you know, basically completely took off and traveled the world. And I think maybe I was more depressed last year than I am now working in a restaurant again.
I'm not surprised.
But you know, you need to have those experiences to kind of hone in on what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it and what really does make you happy and bring you joy. And if you are lucky enough to do the work that you love, then of course the work doesn't feel like work. But sometimes your life, I don't want my life to be work all the time, and I don't want my life to be play all the time. I want some semblance of balance. And I think we have such a nice thing going here right now, because it does feel like we have a balance between our work being pleasurable and us also seeing that we have an amazing group of people here who all are enjoying that work and giving each other the freedom and flexibility to do other things in their life as well too.
I think it's amazing, and not everything is open yet, but when everything blows open, that's really going to show. I got to get you guys out of here soon, but I want to do a few things before we go. You started talking about it, but be a little more specific and firm. The wine events, there are things you're doing on the calendar. You know, tell me the wine things that you're already doing and some of the things, you know, that either you've done at Rimessa and Rome that you're bringing here. You talked about you had a private wine event, so you could come
on Saturdays and Sundays.
So wine classes.
Mm-hmm. They're led by Alessandro. And
how do you find out about that?
And you can book them.
Okay.
There's a ticket.
Do you guys have a website yet?
We do. It's RoscioliNYC.com.
Is that wine stuff on it?
There will be a calendar on there. You can also join the wine club, which is like the best deal in town.
So I could sell the wine club easily. You know, we just talked about this whole approach and understanding of wine. These are wines that you're curating from the club that we've been talking about for almost the last hour. True?
What I loved about the Sheldrake book about mushroom, that you understand that a mushroom is a multi-identity living being. It's like it's not located in one specific thing. So if you start to have a mushroom approach to things, it's not about what is my core business. Is that a restaurant? Is that the wine club? Is that Rome? Is that the tomato sauce? I know it's just actually the connection of all these things together that makes the business that we're building. And you know, she was saying we come from a socialist
Sounds like
country.
what would a mushroom do?
I think your spirit is a mushroom.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about psychedelic mushrooms, but maybe yes. Maybe I am, but anyway. So the concept is that we don't have to think, and this is something I'm fighting a lot, especially with my colleagues and employees, is about we need to start to think on a multi-layers of concept, because that's, first of all, how nature and life is. That's how you get pleasure from things.
Sure.
Okay, for example, dividing also the polarity of things, dividing the life in my free time and my busy time. free time to do what? To free time to you work, so you do something you don't like in order to do something you like, but then you do it 80% of the time. No, that's not work. Why don't you do a job that you like so that the free time is changing, but then you don't know what to do in the free time? It's complex. And so somehow working with something technically is a pleasure, which is wine. Sometimes they tell you, you do the best job in the world, and I used to do this joke, sometimes I feel like someone that loved chocolate then started to work for Willy Wonka. I mean, it could be frustrating sometimes not having pleasure as a concept. But beside that, if we start to understand that we work on a multi-layers, things will be easier. It can be more viral, so we can actually teach other people and show other people. Think about the group of bio producers in Champagne, how Celos and Marguet and Laval, in a little group, created such a big. I wouldn't say that we're doing the same, but in Sardinia, I think yes. I didn't mention Dario Cappelloni, which is a wine journalist. He's one of the last wine scouts that still exists.
What's his name?
Dario Cappelloni. He is like my kind of a big brother in a way, and with Maurizio, which is my mentor. But the way he somehow, there is a little village called Mamoiada in Sardinia, and now everyone is talking about Mamoiada.
Because of him?
Because of him, also because of me, and because of them. Because of them, of course, but for sure.
Yeah, in reality.
And now we are actually doing the same thing in Neonelli, and this is interesting, the way how somehow, and people instead of, Mamoiada is one of the few places where people are not leaving the village. They're staying there, which is kind of unique. All the other places they are doing. Why I'm speaking about all this?
You were talking about the
The
things
wine
that
club.
we're doing here.
I know the wine club is the concept. It's wine event and wine club, in the sense that then now, if wine club is about 24 bottles shipped twice a year. No, but it's more about.
Is it shipped one case of 12
and
one time
then,
of the year and then
another
toward-
one. Okay. We're actually shipping part of it. 30% from next year will be 60% with a sailboat. So we have been the first one shipping wine in a sailboat after 145 years over the ocean. It's an incredible project called Grande Sel, and so although I know it looks like such a fancy thing to do, but it's actually working. It takes only 20 days. It takes less than actually the normal boat because it is not stuck on the custom for 20 days.
Oh, really?
Because the sailboat is faster, and also it actually is also cooler because it goes on the north side. So this thing is about, if you go to the wine club, it means, were we supposed to taste the wine?
Well, not yet.
Not yet, but for example, when you will hear the story of this wine, you will understand how the wine club and Roscioli New York City and Rimessa is potentially there to create a different approach to the wine world. I'm ready to explain it whenever you want.
All right, so that's the wine club. The wine events, you basically pick the wines.
You chooses 3 or 4 wines and
theme
pairs them with some
or
snacks
region or whatever.
At Nish at Rimessa, I don't think we did everything like we did in the last 10 years. I think I did tasting of everything. So we have a list of ideas of things focusing.
Oh, sure.
Usually what I teach in my wine courses is, do not consider a wine course as a school that you have to get a degree.
Right.
A wine course is about
education.
It's not even education, it is experiential. You are enriching your flavor encyclopedia. Every bottle is a little story and is a sip of memory that will stick in your palate. More you get it, more your life will be pleasant, and more story you have to tell to your friends.
That's the way to do it. All right, we're going to end there. We're going to do the wine list quickly, and then we're going to taste that wine and do the story. Here's the wine list. I have 5 questions I've asked all my guests on all my shows. Over 300 shows, the same 5 questions to everyone. We post them on social media. Don't dwell on the answers. Give me a couple answers. If you can't get anywhere, I'll press you a little. All right, here's the first question. I'll start with you. Same question to each of you. What are you drinking now? What's in your fridge? What's on the table? Are you drinking stuff because the opening of the restaurant? Are you drinking seasonal stuff? Give me a couple things you're drinking now.
tequila, and tequila.
Okay. Is that a summary thing?
Nope.
Okay. And are you
Why?
drinking? Wait,
How
are
do you
you
know
drinking
this?
sipping
Oh, yeah.
tequilas? Are you drinking sipping tequilas?
No, I mean, look, I've been drinking a lot of wine for a long
like that?
time, and
Give me 1 or 2 tequilas at a
wine
pour.
makes me tired these
Tequila
days,
doesn't?
and tequila does
Give me
not.
1 or
and
2
I'm way
tequilas
more
you
fun
like.
on a little tequila.
I'm sure.
Fortaleza has always
Fortaleza
been my
solid.
stronghold, and I don't know. I mean, I like making cocktails. That's
With
my
tequila?
foundational background is actually cocktail
Do you
culture.
do any spicy stuff?
I love spicy
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
My wife infuses
I also-
habaneros in what's that liqueur in the long bottle? It'll come to me. What are you drinking now? I would assume.
I can tell you that the last time I had tequila, I was 18 years old.
Me too, and I.
Oh, we need to rectify
Me too, and I threw it up.
No,
and
I cannot
can't
even smell. I cannot
Yes,
even
you
smell.
Same
can.
it.
exact thing.
We're
Same
gonna
exact
change your
thing.
mind on
You're my
tequila.
man. All right, what are you drinking now? Outside of
Outside the vino, vermouth and bitter. Vermouth and bitter is like I'm going crazy with
So wait,
natural vermouth and bitter.
just vermouth with bitters, or do you
No,
cut it?
vermouths, bitters, and amaro. These
and
are
amaro,
and
okay.
amaros. And I cannot. I'm sorry. Seems I'm showing off. But we're actually importing our own amaros and vermouth and bitter, and we're probably soon crossing finger. We're gonna buy a company.
Roscioli brand or
It's actually.
your
Can I
brand?
say this is mine? I mean, I love
Okay.
Roscioli,
Yes,
but
of
this
course.
isn't.
What's it called?
It's called the Visconti, and
Yeah,
they
yes.
make the best bitter and amaro ever. The vermouth regular is beautiful, and he wants to leave the place. He's gonna stay with us for the next 2-3 years, but we're gonna buy the company, so we're gonna potentially make on any winery we work with. We can make our local beer vermouth.
I get a
and
new
bitter.
project.
Okay,
There you go. All right, second question. This is the goofiest question on
Yeah.
the list, but it was there from the beginning. Do you have a favorite wine and food pairing? Do you look at a food and a wine that you don't eat it often, maybe a few times, but that is just the perfect ooh-ah match?
Etna Rosso and tuna fish.
What kind of tuna? Like out of the
I like to play with the different consistency of tuna fish towards one specific bottle of wine. So you can go with raw tuna slightly marinated, you can go with buzzonaglia, then you can go with the ventresca, the belly part, or the toro, and then you go with the fillet and the red tuna fish. I know tuna fish is not really environmental friendly.
I
but
fish for tuna here in New York.
Okay.
We eat it raw,
Okay.
we cook it.
And
every
I don't
possible-
go mad for
Why
tuna
is the
fish.
Etna Rossa?
I don't go.
Why are those?
I don't go mad for tuna fish,
That's
and I
Sicilian,
don't really
right?
go. Yeah,
Etna
Sicilian.
Rossa. Why does that work? with-
Technically, is every wine school will tell you it's not a good pairing because they're both.
But that's the
they are
beauty
both,
of-
they're both metallic and iron. Sorry, iron like metallic.
Yeah.
Technically, you don't match iron with iron. But
Sometimes game meets game.
yeah, well, yeah, of course. But in that specific case, you have this crossing border of a wine that is mountain and sea, because Sicily is all about
Right.
mountain and sea. And you have a fish that has the consistency of the meat, and on the same time makes you play with these two ideas. And if you finish with a bit of a caponata to sweeten up the palate, I think that the pairing we had yesterday,
amazing.
to me, not a lot of people maybe understand it. That buzzonaglia needs to stay in olive oil for another couple of months, but was a bit too strong in my opinion. We gave buzzonaglia, I think, for the first time in US,
Yeah, that was
because
wild.
buzzonaglia usually they throw it away. It's like the spine of the tuna, full of blood, and in Italy it used to be the poor
Not
thing.
the collar, the spine.
The spine,
Yeah.
the column,
God.
yeah, whatever. No, sorry,
Yeah.
whatever.
God, they're like on animals, tail to nose. They're eating everything.
Yeah,
on
it's like
fish now.
it's like the belly, when you do
Yeah.
like the pagliata in Rome, like and it used to be a poor thing. Now it is actually more expensive than the fillet.
All right, top that.
I mean, mine's never going to change. I'm going to give you the same.
I
every
love
single
the fact
time.
that it is what it
It's
is.
pizza and champagne.
Pizza
Yeah, you're right.
This is
champagne.
my life.
I forgot about
It's
that.
my number one,
forgot
two ride or
about
die.
that.
Lambrusco and mortadella, another one that I love.
That's a good
Oh,
one.
mortadella.
Lambrusco's underrated in my
We're gonna do a lot of job with
All
Lambrusco.
right. I don't know.
Hush, you do.
This has always been on the list, and it's always provided great answers. I don't know if you're going to be comfortable answering it. Favorite wine restaurant and our wine bar. Like, who in New York do you see does it well?
Oh, well, I wasn't going to answer in New York, but
Anywhere.
Sure. I mean,
Anywhere.
I've definitely got a ton that
Give me
I love.
a couple. Pick
Um,
your favorite city place.
Well, I just was recently in Amsterdam and Copenhagen, two of the most incredible wine places I've ever been. I'm not going to say that the prices are cheap, but the access that they have, my goodness. Copenhagen apparently gets the same allocation as all of England. So literally every single wine in the world,
Is
they
that because
get
of Rene
just-
Redzepi, or it preceded
no,
that?
it's like somebody created the allocated numbers and
Okay.
they like gave an entire country to one small place.
Okay.
So the wine that I got to drink there, again, not cheap, but incredible. I will say that Ventre in Paris, his wine collection, Marco's wine collection,
I
is
love Marco.
real.
Marco's been on the show.
And the food has
I had
gotten-
one of the worst. I should not say that.
Well, that's okay. That's okay that you had that. I've had the
But
exact opposite.
everyone told me Vantra
But
is great. I have to go
think
back.
it's one of the most special places, and if you get to visit his cellar, it's
Yeah.
even next level. You know, the place that kind of changed my life for wine was when Vanya was at Joe Beef, and no wine list,
When
just
David was there.
her. And her explaining and selling. And I was such a novice when I went there, but the experience of drinking wine there is just next level.
She's still a star up in
Oh, yeah.
Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so those are good, and I mentioned I will post them, so people listening on our social media, can you think of any place?
Of course, I can think a lot of places. Talking about New York, which has,
Anywhere.
I don't know. I'll give you a
I
couple.
would love your take on New York, though.
I will give you a couple of. I will give you a couple of places. Talking about New York, even if I still a lot of places that I have to visit, I had possibly one of the best wine nights in New York with the Four Horsemen.
Oh, yeah. Our
Wow.
great.
But no, but
Special
also
place.
because that night I like to offer. I'm kind of, and I opened bottle. We were in two, and so and I offered to the entire bar, and then we started. And he made us taste a Texas wine. It was actually
boy.
quite interesting, yeah. And so I love it. In terms of Italy, and this I need to thank my friend Gaetano. Gaetano is incredible in finding places that are completely lost in the middle of nowhere. One is called the Locanda Mariella. I haven't been there for the last 10 years, but when I was there, that was a place that was truly super traditional.
Where is
from near Parma. So
Parma?
we're talking about Emilia Romagna. They make the most fagioli cotiche. Cotiche is the skin of the pork with beans. It's the most poor type of food.
Peasant food.
And so on, peasant food. And they have that we had that night. Chateau Lafite 90 for $150. Clos du Mesnil 90 for like $300.
My
They were-
goodness.
I don't know. And we had this incredible wine list with the most poor food ever. So Lafitte and Beans was the best pairing ever. And they are a strange couple. They run that place. It's in the middle of nowhere. In
Those
the
are
middle of
good
nowhere.
ones. That's a good one. All right, like I said, I'm going to post those. All right, fourth question. The question originally was posed to my guest as, what is your favorite all-time wine? What is your favorite all-time wine? Don't answer that. My intention was sort of like, what's the rarest, most expensive wine you ever drank? I don't give a crap about that. The question has morphed into, what is that wine that changed the way you think about wine? That was a gateway wine. That was influential. That's important. If there's more than one, fine. But what's that wine? And you know, it's funny how people answered. It was a crappy champagne when they got engaged in the first Bordeaux. So where do you go with that?
Well, the wine that changed my life was probably Ravenswood.
Really?
My parents were in the Newcomers Club, and when I was a kid, they would have like wine and cheese parties, and that was the extent of the wine that
But
they
that's
were
not
drinking.
the crappiest supermarket wine. It's not supermarket wine
At
at
the
all.
time, it was kind of like
Fancy?
fancy. It was not $10, which
No,
some
no.
of their other wines were. And I would say that as a kid, I used to always say to my parents, like, are you going to have a bottle of Ravenswood at your party? You know, like I gave a shit that they were going to have something that I thought
And
was
you
good.
recognized when you tasted it, there was
No,
Oh,
of course
okay.
not. But like,
it was the allure
but
of
that
it.
was like, that's class, you know?
That's
and
so funny.
and so, like, to me, that will always be kind of like my first memory, my visceral memory with wine. But the wines that like actually changed my life and changed my career were when I was working for Chef Grant Achatz and I was working at the office, and we had a very curated little wine list, and the Chef Achatz would always drink Krug. And I remember, you know, there was a little bit left in the bottle at the end of the night, and I got to taste it. And I was just like, I don't get it. Like, why is this the best? Why is this so expensive? Why is this what he drinks, right? And I had not tasted a lot of champagne at that time. So for me, it was kind of like when you ask someone to start explaining wine when they have no vocabulary for it, I was just like, this kind of just tastes like, you know, flat acid, right? And now here I am 15 plus years later, and I can tell you absolutely everything about Krug. And I can tell you that from the nattiest wine lover to the most aficionado, if you open a bottle of Krug, everybody's wine glass goes up and everybody wants that wine. And it's generally pretty delicious. And it's not like, it's not the most artisan produced wine, but it's also been able to sustain
It's a house.
it's been able to sustain an allure for so long that is only getting better. That I would say that wine was the first time that I tasted something and I didn't understand it, and it took time for me to get there.
But it opened up your vision of.
Well, now I need to start tasting more champagne, because if this is the
You've
quote unquote
tasted enough.
best, what. And we've drank some bottles of Krug together, and they've definitely brought us together. So I picked the fanciest to the not fanciest.
What can you think of a wine?
I can think a lot of them. I can mention at least a couple that really changed my life. I'm against the concept of finding winner and loser in wine, in art in general, but it happens that we have some Madeleine. And what is incredible about wine that is stronger than Madeleine. I've always been a fan of decadentism, so Joyce, Proust, Dostoevsky, Thomas Mann, that aura that at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, they were saying, monsters are coming, mass culture is coming, we are here, the Verdurin culture, against so the idea that there was an aesthetical approach to things and love for beauty and class also. In a way, we are all snobbing in a way or in another. So there are moments that are, to me, one is specific when I was invited to this harvest party at Castello de Rampolla. And I remember we arrived at with a horrible car and everything, and we were drinking the worst wine in the world. There was like the leftover of the Chianti, because that's what the wine house,
From Rampolla?
Because Rampolla used to invite all the village to her winery, La Principessa di Napoli. And so she was having this, and I remember with my friends throwing up, one of those teenager, we don't know how to control ourselves.
Right.
So I was completely done. I'm not going to drink wine for the rest of my life. One of those things. Now we're looking for the restroom, and I got lost in the castle, the middle-aged castle of Rampolla. And I remember it was like Harry Potter situation, like something in between Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, with this big, huge painting. We're talking about the relatives of Piccolomini family, Borgia, all the popes and king of Italy. and at a certain point, I got lost, and then I entered in the room. There was this fireplace that was bigger than my apartment, and there was just two people actually smelling this wine in a glass like this, and actually, I'm sorry, looking for the restroom. And the guy called me, no, coming, guy. I was 18 years old. We would like you to taste the wine that we just opened. We were having a discussion. We were thinking about a discussion about if it is better Sangiovese or Cabernet. We don't know it, and we created this new wine, and I tried it, and I boom, was this explosion in my palate, maybe because of this incredible environment. I was reading Proust at that time. And that guy was Giacomo Takis. Giacomo Takis, the Michel Rolano Italy. He's the creator of Sassicaia. I discovered it 10 years later.
Super Tuscans. He blended Vinifera grapes.
And the wine was a San Marco 86. So it's actually the first vintage of San Marco.
Wow.
And so whenever I try that wine, I have a shiver in my mind. And the other one is, of course, Krug in any version, but mainly is a Clodumini 85. And I remember opening at my birthday a few years ago, and
Who knew? 2 for 2 on Krug.
We're fans.
That's a heck of a story. All right, last question. The question is, recommend to me best wine around 15, 20, 22 bucks, a red and a white. Hold on. I do that because I have kids in their mid-late 20s. One of them's 30. They can't afford to spend 40, 50 bucks a bottle, but they're beyond buying crappy supermarket wine for 11, 12. So the question, you could stay with the price or not. What are the best value wines? Where are we getting the best value on the lower end of the price range?
To me, there is a big misunderstanding in terms of what you mean when you connect quality and quantity. This is a liter. No, it's 0.75 liter of poison. Can we say that? It is alcohol. Do you think we can share this bottle in 8 people? I think yes. It's a medium little glass of wine. It was an
Why
incredible.
don't you pour that out now? Pour it out.
I
and
mean,
we'll talk.
this is here.
But wait,
Look at
are you
this.
telling my question is
This is a
silly
sip of
and it's
pleasure.
hard to answer to recommend, value wines?
No,
'Cause
I'm
it's
doing it.
hard.
I'm
Okay.
finishing the question. I'm saying, first of all,
right, pour
let's
me
figure
through.
out. Let's figure out that with this experience, if you drink slowly, and that's what I mean. I'm 51 and drink less and less because I'm getting old.
Me too.
Drink it
Screwing my
slowly.
sleep up.
You don't need more than this wine to share with a group of friends. And this is $3 of wine, not even $2 of wine. You know why? Can I give you a little story? I have my best friends. They cannot spend more than $4 in a bottle of wine. They freak out.
For the whole bottle?
Yeah, that's Italy, okay? They freak out, and I'm the snobbish guy. I remember we were going out for like drinks, and we went to buy a bottle of champagne. It was $50. We were 7 people, so we spent like $7. What, $50? A bottle of champagne? This is coming. It was actually, I think it was a Pierre Peter. Okay, so it was actually good buy. It was Chatillon Pierre Peter, $50. So one was not so expensive as nowadays. Then we went to a pub. We had 7 Guinness, $8 each. Nobody complained.
It's so
Why?
funny.
Why?
That is such
Tell
a
me.
great.
I love Guinness. You don't even pay for the glass because it's draft beer. Why they didn't complain? So give me this story about Wally Perot. Beside that,
People are
all the concept
conditioned.
of wine prices, all the wine cost to the producer between $3 to $7, $8. That's what they cost to the producer. So if you go directly to the producer, that's what the wine should cost. You pay a bit more for a Barolo, but that's it. Or a Brunello, but that's it. Wine should all cost below $40, $50, in my opinion. But technically, between $25 and $30, you buy everything. Then you have to think about shipment, taxes, FDA, and all the stuff you have to pay in US, which is affecting between 60 to 70% of the price of the wine, originally speaking. But that to me, every wine we have actually around that price now here.
Right.
All the wine club wines are a bit more expensive, but technically around that range of price.
Right.
All the good ones are affordable.
I'm not even going to ask you the question because I think unless you.
I think it's easier to talk region than it is to talk individual bottles. I mean, just
Yeah,
the economics of
if
wine
you
right
listen to
now
my
is-
show, I always say recommend I still think Muscadet is not a bad value if you grab
For
it.
sure. I think we
regionally.
would both say that Sicily and everything in the surrounding area of Sicily is an interesting, incredible value. I'm not saying all the wines.
Right.
I'm just saying in general,
But
a lot
that's
of
a
the things
region.
that I'm drinking that are super exciting that they're putting in front of me. Sicilian wines are really jazzy. And Sardinia.
Sardinia is
and,
doing a lot,
it's
and
just
they all cost
special.
between
Is
$8 to
Campania
$15.
making good wines?
Campania is a bit struggling. I have to say, Campania, comparing to the amount of producers they have, it's difficult to find. There's a beautiful quote from Luigi Tecce. We do these documentaries on wine, and the last quote of Luigi Tecce, and I was asking, why I cannot find quality Taurasi? I know we have 200 producers, and you only have like 5, 6 quality winemakers. And he said, but what do you think? I cannot translate it with a strong Naples accent. Do you think that in an 18th century, everyone was Voltaire? So the quality is a limited thing.
That's funny. All right, so we're going to finish the show talking
drinking
about
so
this
nicely
wine.
Huh?
This is drinking better today than it was
Yeah.
last night.
Okay.
So, Alessandro, every week we do the podcast. We taste a different wine. I generally have winemakers, sommeliers, so it's fun for them to pick. I asked you guys to pull a wine out that sort of represents your thinking, the restaurant, the program, and all that. I think philosophically,
More than everything.
we have a good idea of how you approach this and what's going on here. So, tell me what we're drinking.
Okay, we are in Etna, which is
Etna?
a volcano, okay, that everyone is talking about, right? Everyone knows about Etna nowadays. 15 years ago, not even in Italy, we knew that Etna was a volcano. Nobody knew that they were making wine there. 20 years ago, before Benanti arrived, but actually who really changed the rules of Etna are Marc de Grazia, Franchetti, and Cornelissen, okay? Like them, blame them, do whatever you want, but if we know Etna now, it's mainly because of these 3 people. None of them is from Etna. None of them is Sicilian. One is from Belgium, one is from Tuscany, the other one is Italo-American, more or less. But 2 of them are imported. One is coming from a rich family, unfortunately Franchetti, which was a beautiful person. we did the last tasting with him at Rimessa a couple of months before he was passing away. It was possibly one of the most moving experience. He knew then he was not a lot of life left, but he also described how somehow he promoted this area. Now, can I tell you that when I taste Etna wines, I get really confused over what is Etna? In the sense that I have these incredible vineyards. I have 80 years old, 100 years old, the Prefilloxera vineyard, 1,000 meters, 900 meters, and then you have all the Contrada. But then I say, yeah, I don't really get it. And then when you go through it, it's difficult to find people that are from Etna. They make Etna wines. So when I found the Giuseppe and Valeria, and they're 35 years old, 36 years old, both of them, he had inherited the vineyard from the grandfather. He's probably one of the few with Calcagno that is technically from Passo Pisciaro, Giuseppe and Valeria. And we all talk about terroir, right? Let's make it even more easy. When we come to a winery, they tell you, it's all this composition of the soil, and then you taste the wine, you just taste jam, cherry, and oak. Why you show me the soil if the wine is just shitty, like whatever? Yeah, really. And there is no relation with what you taste and what you get in the soil. Okay, believe it or not, put the nose inside the glass. Isn't it? I know, like it or not, because this is a kind of a bit of slightly funky wines, but is this lava flow? Isn't it the most volcanic wines you ever had? I mean,
there's something. I'm terrible at descriptors.
Yeah.
Well, smoky in the nose and the palate. So a couple things. Say the producer slowly for me.
Scirto.
Spell?
Scirto.
Scirto. And this bottling is called what? Is there a...
Aculonna.
Okay.
They also make another wine that is called Don Pipino. And Don Pipino, you might remember there is another producer that make a wine called Don Pipino. And there is a video where he said he stole my uncle because Don Pipino.
So,
but this is another story.
The grape?
It's called, I have no clue, but it's for sure Nellero Mascalese, Nerello Cappuccio. But like any old vineyard that has not been regrafted and re-established,
blended?
There's blended another maybe 7, 8.
Is it
probably a bit of a Caricante.
Field blended?
They just harvest all of it. Some of them they can recognize it. There are at least another 15 different local biotypes that are not descriptive.
All right, so let's do a quick evaluation, and then we got to wrap up. All right, so color, it's pretty, deepish purple.
I would say it's garnet.
Garnet
with
edges. In the middle, it's dark.
Bit of a dustiness to it.
All right, so that's
last time
color.
I did something like that was 20 years ago.
Ariel, give me the nose descriptors.
Oh, the nose.
To me, here you have cloves. You have a lot of delicate spices. You have a bit of
It is spicy.
Garrigue, Macchia Mediterranea, a bit of a black pepper. I don't like describing wines in general, but then you have this smoky ashes, volcanic, lava flow, metal. When people don't know what does it mean minerality, usually I give wine like this. This is like the concept of a mineral wine. Not a lot of fruit. There is a bit of a cherry, like a sour cherry thing, but it's I wouldn't say it's.
We tasted this wine last night, and it was much leaner and meaner. And today the fruit is much more explosive.
There's a bitterness to this wine that I like, like almost like a bitter almond or something.
It's
pleasant.
a sweet business.
Like you use bitter, and it's kind of an off-putting description, but it works well in this wine. All right, the mouthfeel is sort of a medium plus. It's not a thin wine. It's not unctuous. It's got
to me,
nice...
it stays on those edges where I don't care anymore. What does it mean, the length of the wine? Because it's so memorable how, especially I link it with the place. And also, I didn't finish the story that last year, this is coming from a vineyard that was on sale. And so the guy said, next year, I cannot give you this wine anymore because my uncle is selling the vineyard. And so I said, okay, I'll buy it so that you can give it to me. And this actually created, now we have investors that want to buy vineyards in order to save it.
So you've kept this vineyard going?
Yeah. Now, there is a little house. We're restoring it.
Jeez,
and it's and now we're going to do the same thing in Sardinia, another one in Cinque Terre. And it's creating this thing that we are helping winemakers to continue to stay there and produce it in a certain way. So that's why I chose this wine as an iconic wine of our wine club and
that is a great
Roscioli, New York City.
That is a great story. Is this available, Ariel? I know we can come here and get it. Are there any like decent wine shops that you and I know about that have?
No, this is all.
No,
if
no,
you-
no, no, no.
Okay, so if you want this wine, another
This
good
is
reason to come here.
just through them.
Yeah,
You can buy
Right.
it
So the
probably through
palette we
the
talked
wine club.
about, there's not a ton of fruit, but there's a little cherry. There's definitely that volcanic.
It's unique.
It is unique.
You would never miss this wine with anything else. This is what I like. We talk about terroir, but we don't know what is terroir. I like Burgundy because it doesn't taste like Oregon.
I love this one. think it's super-
not that I
super-
don't like Oregon.
All right,
but it's,
the last question on this wine is, again, a silly question. What do you guys see as a great pairing food-wise for this or anything?
Well, you did. You
What'd you?
used it
yesterday we
last-
did this tuna
yesterday.
fish. I was talking before.
So
we did
what
this
you
tuna-
said before?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
tuna
so
fish
the
thing.
different kinds of tunas?
I think that would go also with duck. This one here, something with the or a pigeon could be also a nice thing. Like beef beef meat that is not as maybe as fat as
Right.
or
Right.
some little game, not too strong.
I could see something salty, some salty cheese.
Yes.
Nothing
So
too. Nothing.
What
too
about
fresh.
charcuterie? You know,
Yeah, I mean a plate
meats
of
with
prosciutto,
salt-
a
prosciutto
plate
would
of
be
Oh,
great, right?
Montenegro di, even though in
so
that
a
case,
charcuterie platter with well thought out stuff would be a great.
salame from Montenegro di.
Sure. I mean, I could see a little jamon iberico or
Yeah,
even
but
a little
Iberico,
salsa
the problem of Iberico that they don't really match with tannic wines. This is not a strongly tannic wine, but
Yeah.
Etna tends to have tannins. So
Why does-
tannin,
why-
because it makes your palate a bit too dry at the end. Because there is this concept of Iberico tend to dry. It's tannic Iberico as a
The ham is
So
tannic?
yeah, yes, a bit.
So it's tannic against tannic?
In a way, yes, it's sweet in the center, but that you
Right.
get.
I never knew that.
I would
That's
never.
an-
We tried
And
Barolo.
prosciutto is not like that?
No,
as much as
Culatello is
Iberico?
perfect with Barolo, for example. It's horrible with Barolo is horrible with Pata Negra.
Well, it's very tannic.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the
That was the one.
Excellent.
that
You know
is
what?
the
Not that I want to keep this going. I'm so
Screto.
sorry, but like a wine like this, and you might be like, "You're dumb," because that's how they make this. But I feel like this is the type of wine that you would taste in. It would go through something like carbonic maceration if this was made by somebody else, and you would lose all of the texture and you would lose the mid palate of this wine. And this wine is so much itself and so full from start to finish. There's fruit, there's acid, there's a through line. It is not ruined by a style of winemaking.
This
It just is.
You just said something that is the end part of the documentary that I did with them. We never talk about this issue about this dichotomy between conventional and natural wines. And what is interesting that what I noticed that I like winemakers that are natural without knowing it. It means we discovered that we were making natural wines. While there are a lot of neo-rurals, they go back, they put a fancy label with a drawing from their child, and then they let it go. And it's so that's a bit the tricky thing, sometimes, the funkiness of the wine that covers a bit the lack of tradition, the lack of knowledge. But this is a wine with zero.
I agree with
This
that.
is zero sulfates here.
Is
No
it?
filtration, decantation,
Wow.
totally.
All right, we got to wrap up.
Yeah. Was that 7 hours? How?
No,
We killed this one.
I knew we would go this long, and I knew.
Sorry to the listeners.
Not sorry at all. Believe me, they'll be very engaged by this. And I knew we would go this long, and I knew there would be no real gap. I mean, there's a ton of interesting stuff here. I didn't want to tell you up front that it would go this long because I know how valuable your time is. But I also know with guys like you, once I get you started, you'll stay with it. So let me do a quick wrap up, and I want to get some info from you for our listeners. So if you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. Subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. The reason we ask you to subscribe is if you're a fan of the show, you subscribe and the podcast shows up. There's Ariel right next to you in bed on a Wednesday night.
Not IRL.
Leave a review if you like the podcast. Follow us on Instagram at SBenRuby, on Twitter at BenRuby. I know it's confusing, but you can always reach us with the hashtag The Grape Nation to find us on both. We're on Facebook at The Grape Nation. As I mentioned a few times during the show, we will post Ariel and Alessandro's wine list answers, and I will post our weekly wine sip selection. This is truly a unique, interesting, delicious wine. So I think that will get people intrigued and maybe come here and taste it. So here's the last thing. If people want more information on Roscioli, New York, we mentioned this. Mention it again, Ariel.
Yeah, so you can go to the website, which is rosciolinyc.com.
Roscioli, Roscioli
NYC.com.
And
we have our Instagram account, which is Roscioli NYC.
Okay.
You can make reservations via Resi.
So you're a Resi.
As a disclaimer for upstairs, when we open the end of the summer, it will be walk-in only. So reservations will always be for the tasting. And of course, you can buy tickets on Resi for the wine classes and for the Taste of the Legend dinners on Mondays and Tuesdays.
So one thing I noticed, one thing I knew, and one thing I found out is you are a prolific social media person.
Whoa.
There's a lot of content in your life, whether it's working, traveling, your personal life. I mean, you'll stand in your lobby with an outfit, and to you, you just, that type of stuff. You, on the other hand, I don't think, do you do anything on social media?
I don't have any social media page.
What do we do to get this guy going?
He has one.
No, I have a YouTube. I have the YouTube Roscioli, the YouTube channel, which is not.
So
he
tell
basically
me,
just wants to give you his phone number.
So tell me, what's the YouTube thing? What is it, and how do we get there?
We Intravino, which is the kind of the
Intravino.
No, aspetta, no, Intravino is the kind of the wine spectator of Italy.
Okay.
They just actually wrote an article a few months ago saying that we are the biggest video library on wine in the world. We have more than 700 documentaries on wine. And we publish our videos every week on Repubblica.
So this is something that you're
It's happening for the last 10 years. Yes,
Oh,
technically.
wow. So you're heavily.
Every single one we have is linked to with the video of the winemaker.
So like me, I've done hundreds of podcasts. You've done.
We have a video production made.
So wait, where do I find this?
Roscioli YouTube. And
Okay.
you also Repubblica
Okay.
website, which is the Italian New York Times, more or
Did
less.
you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't. All right, I want to thank our guests, my friend Ariel Arce, my new friend Alessandro Pepe from Roscioli, New York City. The creativity, the passion, the uniqueness going on here is off the charts. I wish you guys the best of luck. I don't think you're going to need luck. We'll all take it, though. So continued, happiness, doing this, and we'll check back with you soon. So you've been listening to The Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Ben-Ruby. We'll see you next time. The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.